Hello. So this should be a fun one. I'm going to get real vulnerable and tell you about the story of my life. I do this for you so that if you have any questions about who this guy is and why I'm speaking about what I'm speaking about, maybe it can give you some insight as to the choices I've made in my life to lead me to speak from where I am. So, I was born at a very young age. Probably when I became interested in spirituality, which is the topic of this channel, which I share with you, is when I was about 14 years old. And, as a kid who grew up with the internet, there's many things to watch. Video games, all these distractions and things you can do. But I just remember watching some videos from Alan Watts and Ram Dass specifically. And I remember a sense of peace falling over me when I listened to their words. And at the time, I had no idea what they were talking about, but I just knew that it felt good, and something about what they were saying resonated with me. And during this time, I was doing actually not during that time, but a little bit later, I was doing all the things that one might expect you to do as a teenager. Drinking. I'm from British Columbia, Canada, so you can imagine some other things as well. Doing all those activities that one does at that age when they're lost in the world and just trying to find a sense of meaning and satisfaction from their experiences around them. And I continue to do this throughout high school and a bit into college as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Throughout high school, I had a kind of deep sense of that the world is meaningless and that nothing matters. And I guess you could say the paradigm of materialism didn't quite sit right with me. It made me depressed. At least that's what I said about myself at that time. I was very sad, you could say. Not in a everyday sort of sense, but more of a existential meaninglessness of everything was my lived experience. I couldn't quite understand why the world was the way that it is. Something about the general trend of society displeased me. And so throughout all this time, I continued to seek happiness in the world through video games, substances, relationships, ideas of careers and status and different things to seek. And I guess in the back of my mind this whole time, from the videos which I watched of Alan Watts and Ram Dass, I had some inkling that maybe there was some other purpose or some other source of happiness or meaning that wasn't something that you could attain in the world around you. And don't get me wrong, I still continue to seek pleasure in the world around me, seek fulfillment for quite some time. And I would do all sorts of activities, engage in all sorts of addictions. And I think this is a sentiment which is reflected in a lot of people in my generation. a general sense of meaninglessness and sadness and all sorts of other terms to describe that sort of state of mind. And my life led me to become what one would know as a spiritual seeker, someone who believes himself to be some sort of spiritual being instead of a person in the world, and all the trappings that come along with this, and all the identity traps of meditation and ego and trying to understand what you are and all these sort of things. And this kind of private world of introspection or a seeking of meaning went alongside with my external life of being a student and seeking a career and drinking and smoking and all sorts of substances and things like that. And I would say some of these substances at a time opened my mind up to some possibilities that the world wasn't just random matter and that it wasn't just random nothingness. And that possibility kept me going, I guess, a sense of deeper meaning. I could say that probably when I was 14, I had the thought that I really wanted to understand what it all meant. And I know this isn't necessarily a thought or kind of a desire that many people share. Many people are, I believe, accustomed to seeking pleasure and happiness in the world around them. And this is a result of all the conditioning of our society. But there was something in me that wanted to examine another path. Maybe it was looking at some stories or teachings from certain gurus, and they seemed to be pretty content, even though they were just practically naked, really, and they just had a cloth around them. And something about that intrigued me, I guess, as to how they could be so fulfilled and not inherently thinking about a particular belief system or believing or trying to teach you some specific doctrine, if that makes sense. Saying that the answer is somehow outside of you. I should mention that I grew up in a family which you could associate with the New Age movement of spirituality and these sort of kind of ideas and concepts of consciousness and mindfulness and that sort of sphere of identification of all those sort of conversations. It was never something that my family taught me about explicitly, but I think I picked up on this sort of underlying state of mind from them a little bit. So anyway, where was I? After my experiences with high school and into my experiences with college as well, in my kind of late adolescence, I found some videos from a gentleman known as Rupert Spira on YouTube and Francis Lucille as well, and became interested in the idea of self-inquiry and the non-dual direct path to understanding. And that seemed pretty attractive to me at the time because direct path. Why would you take a longer path than the direct path to happiness? I wanted to be happy. I didn't want to suffer. So I decided to watch these videos, and something about what they had to say resonated within me as the truth. I had a kind of intimate understanding that what they were saying was real and truthful, and it wasn't a belief system to believe in. And I felt this way because of the peace which apparently fell over me when I listened to their words. And I think this is something that is reflected across any kind of spiritual tradition. When the student is in the presence of the master, everything seems to make sense and everything feels good. And then when the student leaves and goes off on their own life, everything seems to be chaotic again, and they seem to be distracted. And they don't seem to just get it anymore. And I found this was my experience for some time. So throughout this time and throughout my experiences, I guess I decided that I really wanted to go to the root of all my problems and all my suffering, and to understand why I'm here, if that makes any sense. And I found the path of self-inquiry, which just means to question who this idea of a self is, to be the most effective for me. And the words "know thyself" are repeated in the content on this channel, which I share with you. And I found them to be very useful as a singular directive to point to the direction of your attention, where your direction of your attention should lie if you still believe yourself to be a seeker of happiness, or a seeker of peace, or that you feel that you don't get it yet, or that you feel that you're still dissatisfied with the world around you. So anyway, I'll continue with my story. So by the time I was in college, I had already seen many videos of this kind of non-dual teaching and understanding, and along with many other spiritual teachers. And I had this kind of concept of presence and mindfulness and the present moment and all these sort of things. And I wondered, still in the back of my mind, like what it really meant to do these things, and what kind of state I had to accomplish or achieve to be this certain way and to be happy ultimately, to be satisfied. And still throughout this time I engaged in many activities which at this time I don't anymore, such as drinking and smoking and seeking happiness in the world around you and all this sort of thing. And I think at a certain point I accumulated or absorbed enough understanding from these teachers and enough kind of inner practices, you could say, to introspect and question the reality of my own existence, the reality of the thoughts in my own mind, things like that, and where their origin was. And I examined enough of these thoughts, and eventually, after absorbing all these teachings, like I said, I became aware of all the behaviors which I was continuing, ones which weren't necessarily benefiting me. And eventually I suppose I could say I became aware of them enough that they just stopped over time. Of realizing slowly that my lived experience, my state of mind, for example, before I had a beer and after I had a beer were identical, and that the beer really didn't add or subtract anything from me. It didn't make me any happier. That's just an example. But you could substitute the idea of a beer for any substance or any sort of seeking attitude for searching for meaning or happiness in the world. So after a lot of seeking and after a lot of thinking about this sort of thing and trying to understand the truth conceptually, a sense of calmness, kind of unwittingly, a sense of peace, became more of my true nature. It didn't really become more of my true nature, it always was. But the less I tried to seek it in other things and in certain experiences or certain states of mind, the more the truth really resonated with me. And the sense of being, I would say, is the only thing that was left. I wish that I could describe analytically to you the way that my mind has come to terms with my understanding. But ultimately, I understand and I believe that it would not help you to know the truth, and that your own path and your own versions of conceptualizing the truth may be different than in my own experience. But I dedicate this channel to expressing my own sense of being to you, so that hopefully the peace which overflows within me may overflow within you as well. And I would say that it's nothing for you to accomplish. I spent much time trying to conceptualize what specific combination of experiences I needed to have in order to feel good, and this sort of thing. But truthfully, there's nothing in the world which can satisfy you eternally. Only your own being. In my channel description, I believe it says something that along the lines of, the wish of this channel is for you to know yourself as I am. I don't wish for you to know all of my thoughts and know yourself as this character here. But I wish for you to know yourself as your own presence, as the words I am from your perspective, not mine. Because this is the truth and the answer that you've been looking for and that I search for. Your own presence, your own being, is the source of all peace, all happiness, and all fulfillment. And don't take my word for it. Like I've mentioned in some other videos, I have no belief system. I've studied many spiritual concepts and almost all of the traditions and the way that they conceptualize the truth. And they're all ultimately the same, but they approach it through different directions. You can come to understand the truth through studying and absorbing the teachings of Islam just as much as you can through the teachings of Christianity or through non-dualism. The truth, as best I can describe it at this state, is that your very being is the answer. In every situation, to every problem, if you're ever suffering, just return to your own being, your own knowingness of your experience, which is prior to any experience you've ever had and ever will have. Your being is eternal. I'll go into this in more videos and in my previous videos I have already, but if anyone who sees this video ever has any questions and they feel that perhaps you wish to understand this perspective, truly isn't a perspective, but if you wish to understand more of why I speak about what I speak of and where I speak from it from, feel free to ask me any question. It's why I'm here. I love you.